Hello and welcome to Faith Talks. In today's program, we'll be discussing faith and disability. Joining me in the discussion and ready to share their views, opinions and expertise are Patrick Johnson, and this time you're joined with your son, Espen Johnson. Espen, you're somebody who we can very visibly see has a disability. Tell me about that. What is it? Why are you in a wheelchair?
I'm in a wheelchair because I have this disease called Mucopolysaccharidosis syndrome or Mucopolysaccharidosis, which is the long term, but really my dad knows more about it than I do.
All right, so should we ask that to explain?
Yes, the Mucopolysaccharidosis syndrome, it's number 4 in a group of 6 diseases that have been grouped together. It's a metabolic disease, very rare, so 1 in 300,000 will get this. And basically it's to do with some of the metabolic processes in the body, and because they aren't working the way they normally should, a lot of waste material gets built up in different places in his body and kind of breaks them down, so in his hips, his spine and different other places. So that's what's going on.
You've had quite a lot of surgery, so you're quite used to the medical system in this country. But that's just part of who you are. How does it feel for you to grow up and grow into a young man? Because you did not start off in a wheelchair when you were born.
No, I think I was permanently in a wheelchair from like maybe 7 or 8, so it was fairly early. So most of my memories are from me being in a wheelchair. So generally I'm really just quite used to being in a wheelchair, and it's almost become more a part of me, I guess. So I don't see it as so much separate, and it's just part of who I am. So growing up more, I guess, with it than it being something on the side, it's just part of me.
How has it affected the family, Patrick?
We've had to adjust some of the things that we do, some of the activities that we've been able to take part in. But generally just really means that we plan a whole lot better when if we're gonna go out and do something together. That has been the main thing, I think, with Espen's disease. There's lots of positives and negatives as well, of course.
So tell me about some of the positives, Espen. What are some of the positives that you're experiencing?
Positives. I guess jumping the queues when you go to Thorpe Park. Don't have to stand for hours waiting around. Yeah. And I guess when going in London, people just part like the Red Sea or whatever. You just go straight through. But I've seen when other people, like when I go with my friends, and if they walk by themselves, they have like dodge around people and stuff because they don't move unless they see me in a wheelchair.
So you're kind of like paving the way for your friends leading out.
Yeah. And I think it's helped us in a sense to get to know lots of other people. We have gotten to know others with have similar problems. The people in the MPS Society, as it's called, we've gotten to know some of those and been on weekends away and things like that. I guess it can be a way of helping to talk with new people too. So it's not all bad really when you think about it.
Tell me, Espen, what is it like to live like you do as a young person?
So I can live like I do. I don't really see it as much different, I guess. I just live how I live. It's not much difference. Like my dad mentioned with the planning, if you do go to London or whatever, I make sure that the train that we're catching will know that I'm in a wheelchair, etc. That the areas that we're going to won't have lots of steps, or if they do have steps, that someone's there to help me. Except that, I don't see it as much different, to be honest.
How do you deal with your friends? I mean, you're at university, when they go out in the evenings, go out dancing and go out and do physical activities. How does that impact you?
I haven't really been out much, to be honest. And most of the stuff that I can do as well, I I don't know if it's because I'm in a wheelchair or what, but I have more interest in things I can do that are more quiet. So I love board games, for example. And so I would prefer just playing board games than go out and do whatever. And there's other people who prefer that as well. So generally, I tend to make friends with those people instead of those who do like to go out more and do things. And I don't see that as a problem or like I'm holding myself back or anything, because if I wanted to go out, I could. I just prefer board games and things.
Now, some years ago, I had to spend a little bit of time in a wheelchair myself, and I found that people really stare at you when you go out in public places, and they look at you like you come from a separate planet. Is that something that you have experienced as well?
Yeah, I have experienced that quite a lot. It used to bother me a lot when I was younger. If they were little children, I would stare back intently at them until they looked away, and I would make it really uncomfortable on purpose just so that they would stop staring. But now I generally don't care. It's fine for people to look and be curious because I am different, I guess. It's not the norm, so it's fine for people to stare. Now, I think the only thing that has ever bothered me recently was this one kid, who I think was like 7 or 8, who was standing right next to me and just staring at me intently for I don't know how long it was. We were in the queue or something. He just kept staring at me, and if you stare from distance, you look glance or whatever. That's fine, but that was really annoying. I just found it annoying because I have some manners, but yeah, generally it's not a problem.
You've grown up in the church, and your father is a minister, and you've grown up with faith and have chosen also to become part of the faith group. So how does your faith impact who you are?
I feel like I'm a lot more positive when it comes to disability because of my faith. Obviously, I believe that there is more than just this life here, so I have more to look forward to, and I don't feel like this physical body right now is, and what I can and can't do is the most important thing. So it's helped me in that sense, and just have I think better outlook on life. I think I remember before one surgery, if I remember correctly, it was my first one, I think, and I was quite young. I said to my dad before going, I'm not scared because I know that God's with me, or I am scared, but it doesn't matter because God's with me, or something like that. So I think it's helped in that sense. So
you feel in very practical, tangible ways that you not only know, but you feel that God is part of your life, and you can relate to that.
Definitely. Honestly, I don't see how people with disabilities can go through that without God, to be honest. I try to have a fairly happy outlook on life and don't focus on negative. But if I didn't believe that there was more after this life, then I don't know what I would be like. So.
What about you, Patrick, as a minister and as a father? How has this impacted your faith?
Yeah, well, all through his life, I've learned a lot from Espen. I'm supposed to be the minister, but his faith has been very strong all the way through. In particular, when he was younger, he would often, depending on how much pain he was feeling, he would often say, well, okay, it's tough now, but when Jesus comes back again, everything will be better. And that always gave me a bigger perspective on things as well. Because as a parent, you want to try and take the pain away from the child, and you're quite helpless in these kind of situations. And so when they are expressing faith so strong, it kind of strengthens you too. So I've learned quite a lot from Espen all through the years in that sense. As a minister, yes, I've had to do my own questioning on the whole meaning of all this, and where's God when all of this happened, etc. And I've had my own journey of faith through it all. So it's been quite an interesting journey, I'll put it that way.
So where was God in all of this when you were questioning Him?
Yeah, I think my conclusion to the whole thing really was, well, He's been where He's always been, and that is right beside us and helping us walk through it. That's been my or our overriding impression throughout the whole, throughout all of Espen's life, really. When we first got the diagnosis, it was such a shock to read the prognosis for this disease. I remember sitting in the living room with this letter from the hospital, with all the things that are going to go wrong, because it's a disease that gets worse with time. I'm thinking, goodness, it's my first child, you know, and I was just crying out to God, saying, why? And in that, I got the overriding impression. And God says, don't worry, we're going to walk through this together. So he wasn't saying, I'm going to take it away and it'll, you know, there'll be no more pain here, but that I'll give you the strength to walk through it. And I think that is something, yeah, that you can only get from this faith in God. You'll read several other stories in the Bible with people who, a man named Paul, who's written a lot of the New Testament, he has a similar kind of experience where he has something or other, he calls it a thorn in the flesh, so, you know, it must be quite painful or whatever it was. And he prayed to God to take it away, and God says, not taking this away, but I will help you through it. I'll give you the strength through it. That's where we are at with it.
Espen, your dad describes you as somebody with a very strong faith. Has your faith ever been wobbly?
Oh, definitely. There have been times where I'm like, why me? Why? And I don't think it's wrong to question God like that. Maybe not even wrong to be angry at times, because obviously it is a stressful situation, and I think God can really empathize with us, and that's really helped me to understand that God isn't happy about this. He's not happy that I'm going through this. He can feel my pain as well, and therefore can actually help me through it. And for me personally, I don't believe God gave me the sickness, which is really important for me, because it would be difficult for me to worship a God if I thought he was giving out these diseases. And letting it happen, I find is different than giving it to me. And he let it happen, that's fine, but he didn't actually give it to me personally. And I've learned much from having this sickness, and it's not, I mean, it's bad, but it's not as bad as, you know, people might think it is. There's lots of positives as well, so.
Espen, you also had a film made about you that followed you for about 10 years, and I would like to actually show a couple of clips from that. First, we'll see you at the early stages, and then we'll see you 10 years later. Let's have a look at that and then continue the discussion afterwards. Well, Espen, that was a bit of you in a film that's made called Ett vackert liv, a beautiful life. But Espen, one of the things you said before we went to the film clip was that God hadn't caused this to you. Tell me about that. How can you be so sure that God hasn't punished you with an illness?
Overall, I believe that we worship a good God. A good God wouldn't give me or anyone else these diseases on purpose. I heard some people saying, like, God gives you these tests or gives you this on purpose you can grow stronger. Personally, I think that's complete rubbish, because a good God would not give anyone these diseases, would make them. I think that they're in the world because of sin, and they happen to people, it can happen to anyone, and God can help you through that and doesn't necessarily stop it because sin is all around us. We live in a sinful world, but God did not cause it himself, personally.
Do you not come across, because I've heard Christians say, oh, it must be because you lived a sinful life, or must be as a result of your parents' sin, and do you come across that? Are people that rude to say that to you?
I think I can only think of one example where a guy came and said, we need to pray more for you. You need to pray harder. You need to pray more to God so he can heal you. Praying enough. Pray more, pray more. But that's only been in one occasion with me, at least. I don't know about that.
Yes, I mean, we have had well-meaning people say to us quite often that we need to pray more for him so that he can be healed, because it's a matter of faith that he gets better. It's as if they can't accept that it's okay to have some form of disability, whatever it is, and that you can still be a person of great faith, and that God is okay with it as well.
But how do you react that? What does it do to you when people come and say that?
I think at first I wanted to set them straight, but I've kind of learned, people they don't know better unless they're faced with a situation, and I use it more as an opportunity now to try and perhaps expand their horizons a little bit. There are lots of examples in the Bible. There's one in the Bible where Jesus' disciples meet a man who's been born blind. And so they ask him, so who is it that sinned? Was it him or was it his parents that he's born blind? And Jesus says it wasn't. It wasn't his parents, it wasn't him. Yeah? And so we've got to understand, sometimes these things happen. What Jesus pointed to was, okay, now God's going to be glorified through this. Somehow it'll work out well, but don't always try to find an answer in the fact that, yes, it must have been something Espen did or something we did. We know that the cause of this disease is because I have a problem on one of my genes and my wife has the same problem on exactly the same one, and that's why it's so rare. And when that happens, Morkios is what's the result of it.
Well, why do you think that Christians are so keen to tell you to pray more and see a disability or an illness as a problem of faith?
I think it's mainly because as Christians we believe that God is in control of everything, that God causes everything. And so we want to have a good explanation for all things that happen. And that's what happens. That would be the natural consequence. Well, then God must have caused this. And, you've got to pray your way out of it. Which I think is somewhat of a narrow way of looking at how life is. As Espen says, we live in a sinful world. There are processes that happen. And God doesn't always step in and stop those processes. He lets them run their course. And so as Christians, what we do then is ask God, well, help us then cope with this. Help us to walk through it. Help us to find comfort in you through this. I think that's what happens then.
But there is a problem in the New Testament when we read that when Jesus says, come to me, and I'll carry your burdens and all of this. And people also see this as saying, Jesus will heal you when you come and you ask for him. Ask in my name and things shall be given to you. And disability and healing are two things that kind of collide in a way. Have you come across, Espen, where people have told you that you should pray for healing and it will happen? And how do you feel when you hear this?
Well, like I said, it's only happened once to me that the person has come directly to me. Maybe because I was so young, so they normally go to my mom and dad. So maybe I'll have more of this in the future. And said that we need to pray more, we need to pray for you, lay hands on you to make you healed. I think I just found it funny more than anything that he could think that. It was ridiculous to me that he could come up to me, a stranger, because I've never met him before, and say, we need to pray more for you so you can be healed. So I haven't really given it much thought, probably because it hasn't happened that much to me.
Yeah, we've heard it more, I think, than Espen has. And I think mainly it's because generally people have this medical model of viewing how life should be. In other words, life should be free from all pain, and the goal of life is to experience only good and pleasurable and positive things. And so if there is some form of illness or sickness, it must be removed in order to live a fulfilled and happy life. And I think that's quite wrong, actually, because there are many things that cannot be removed. Okay, so what are you going to say about a person with a disability? Sorry, you're below standard, you're below God's grace, or what? No. I think we've got to get to the place where we can accept people for where they are at and see, right, can we now help through this? I like to make a distinction between healing and cure. Jesus cured a lot of people in the New Testament. And when you look at the healing that takes place, healing has to do with being part of a community, because often the diseases made you separate from community. Healing takes place when you can then function within a community. And I think our churches can be that despite what disabilities people have. We may not be able to cure the physical impairments, but we can be a healing community, being inclusive and having people join in as much as they can or want to in what happens in a community.
And how would a community go about becoming a healing community?
I think there needs to be some education for a community like that, where we explore the meaning of life in general, where we learn to be accepting of all the limitations that people have, and not just think you have to be at a certain standard in order to be able to function in our community. Jesus valued people no matter who they were. When you look at some of the healings Jesus did, for example, one man who was blind and brought to Jesus, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Which sounds really very strange, because you think, well, obviously he's blind, heal him. But he treated people with dignity, because he didn't assume, I know what you want. And that is also something for a community too. I mean, Espen has experienced, you can tell that yourself, how people are.
I mean, the small things, really. People assume that I need help. So I'll be on the street and people see me, rolling myself, and they'll come up and just start pushing me. I don't need your help. I didn't ask for your help. Yeah. I understand that the intention is really nice, but it would be good if you ask first. Or even if people ask, they'll be like, "Can I help you?" And then they just start. They don't listen for my response at all. So people presume that I need help, and I don't.
So learning to treat people with dignity, ask them first, what do you want? Can I help in any way? And if they say no, then that's fine. It's okay. And that's the kind of communities we can build, where people are welcomed as they are, treated with dignity and respect.
And I think also that comes into a community of equality, because people who are slightly different than what people themselves see themselves with, either have a visible disability or a less visible illness or some other things, perhaps society sees that as a second class and treats them as second class, that it is a problem that they're different, instead of seeing it that it's a positive, that there are differences among us. And perhaps as Christians we transfer those societies' thoughts into our faith.
Because we often think, well, the normal, and people would say, he doesn't function like normal. What is normal? Yeah, because everybody assumes we have this standard of what is normal, and yet there is no generally accepted standard for what normal is. And so, yes, equality for all is the foundation for it. Yeah.
So, Espen, you have talked a little about you have wobbly moments where you ask, "Why me, God?" and you had that as well as a father. Where do you go with that?
I've gone straight to God if you want. I'll pray directly. It's been a few occasions, it's been hours just praying, crying, and then after, reading the Bible as well, and just really communicating with God. And afterwards, there's this peace for me, I guess. Just feel like God saying, "Yeah, it will be okay. It's not that bad. You will get through this." And yeah, that hasn't happened in a long time for me. I've grown to accept it and live with it, live as a disabled person, and
yes, and I think having a disability that doesn't go away, what it is that these times come and go all the time, and so those times when it's intense, if I think about for my wife and myself, we that's when we talk a lot again, and that's where you got to cry again, and it's just part of the process. You have to go through it, and each time you come out a little bit stronger, and you just mustn't be afraid of just walking through that pain, and coming face to face with it, and expressing it, getting it out, talking to God about it, talking together, and as you do that, instead of repressing it, getting it out, it helps. That's why it's good to have support groups as well, where you talk about the issues that come up, and have a chance to air some of those concerns.
Well, I want to thank both of you for taking part today, and just one last thought and one last question, Espen. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I'm studying law at university, and I hope to become a solicitor one day. Further than that, I haven't really planned anything, so we'll see.
Well, thank you, Espen, and thank you, Patrick, for sharing your life and some of the blessings and challenges, and just having an open and honest discussion around faith and disability. Why not add your voice to the debate by joining us on Facebook at Faith Talks? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.